Welcome to Opposition Territory here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest-running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world, over 12 and a half years strong. We've got a great Opposition Territory show coming your way as we focus on the Pittsburgh Steelers, their upcoming offseason, what the future holds for this team. It was an interesting year for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and what is their place going to be in the AFC as we are moving forward? Joining us this week, we've had her on the podcast before. It's been a while, but it's great to have her back. She's the managing editor over at Pro Football and Sports Network, our friend Allison Koehler. Allison, how you doing, my friend?
I am great. Happy belated New Year.
Actually, yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm not one of those people that say, you can't say Happy New Year after 3 days and stuff. It's what are we in? Like mid-January here? Happy New Year
it's so early in the year. But
exactly.
Yet the month is going by very fast.
It is. And you know what? Yeah, the NFL playoffs are also going by fast too. And I'm getting a little upset that we only have 3 more games here.
I know. And the playoffs have been amazing.
They have. They've been really good. Look, your Pittsburgh Steelers that you follow and that you've covered over the years, my Philadelphia Eagles, there was certainly some crapping of the bed for sure. But again, it has been a fun postseason for sure. But Allison, I really want to, dive into this Pittsburgh Steelers team with you. I think it's going to be fascinating where this team moves in the future because of all the changes that are going to be coming to the city of Pittsburgh and with this franchise and organization. But they're going through this transition right now, of course, that we're seeing here as Mike Tomlin is out as head coach, and they're going to be looking for a new head coach this offseason. And I want to get our conversation started by talking about what that level of concern is, amongst the fan base, for the stability of what this franchise and what this team is really going to look like based on not necessarily having that foundational familiarity that Mike Tomlin has brought to the table for so many years, close to 2 decades. So what is that level of concern out there?
Yeah, look, the Pittsburgh Steelers forever, right, have been like the poster boy of stability, right? Yeah. So I feel like with or without Mike Tomlin, the stability is going to be there. It's just a matter of who are they going to find, right? So the Rooney family, right now it's Art, but, eventually it's going to be his son is going to be taken over, because Art's, getting up there in age and whatnot. But,
yep.
It's mainly once, the concern is more about who are they going to find. And, that obviously Danny Smith, their special teams coordinator, who was there for forever, right? The gum chewer,
yeah,
who gave everybody anxiety just from chewing gum. He's gone, right? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers hired him today. Arthur Smith is going to be gone. Everybody's going to be gone. They may keep some coaches depending on whoever they bring in, and this makes a decision of who they're going to keep around. But honestly, I feel like that whole staff is more than likely gone. Yeah. So that's where the concern is. The Steelers are the Steelers, with or without. Because we've seen, three coaches in like a trillion years, right? Yes. And it's unprecedented, right? So.
I wonder if we're going to see that again, though,
right,
Allison.
yeah.
Like, I wonder if the next individual that takes over as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they are going to be there for 15 years, 20 years as well. It's impossible. We don't have a crystal ball. It's impossible for us to predict that. Seems like that's the way the Steelers organization likes to go. But I wonder if hanging on to that type of mentality is really the most productive thing in this NFL in this day and age. I don't know. There's a part of me that likes it. There's also a part of me that understands that this is a win now league, and maybe that's not possible anymore.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. It's like for the longest time, for 15 of Tomlin's 19 years, I was an ardent supporter. I was like, this guy, you know what I mean? We all know, no losing seasons, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, at some point, when is that not enough? Right. And I feel like the majority of Steelers fans, there are some who are still like, oh, Mike Tomlin's gone, what are we going to do? And it's like, come on.
Right.
Like, don't you want to win a playoff game? Don't you want maybe a shot at another Super Bowl before we die?
Right.
So, It became more obvious year after year. They hadn't won a playoff game since the 2016 season in 2017. It's getting a little bit old.
Yeah.
It's repetitive. I just feel like a lot of us, if we're at a job, if we're at one position for too long, we get to be very comfortable, very complacent. It almost doesn't matter what we do, what we don't do. We're always we have that job security.
Yeah.
And I feel like Tomlin had that, but he just wasn't producing. And it didn't seem like anything he did, it was making a difference.
Right. Well,
of like the on-field production. Obviously, the players loved him. They were in tears. That's a different story on a personal level.
Right.
How he was as a coach, but the production on the field was just trash.
Yeah. It hasn't been necessarily great for sure. I have a lot of friends who are Pittsburgh Steelers fans, frankly, and the level of, oh, we're watching this again type of mentality has been there for quite some time. And it's a good segue into the follow-up question, which is, which head coach prospect here would be best for the Pittsburgh Steelers moving forward, really entering this new era? I mean, who is that for you?
Yeah. Well, the Steelers have been defensive-minded, at the head coach position for so long.
Yeah.
And, for the last three coaches. But while I think it would be interesting for them, especially since it's more of an offensive league now than it was when Tomlin came in, when Koehler was there, certainly when Chuck Noll was there, it would be interesting to see if they go with an offensive-minded head coach, but it doesn't seem like that's the route they're going to take. There's some offensive guys in there, but it's like, ho-hum. You know what I mean? I think that they're going to stick with a defensive-minded coach. My feeling is I really like Brian Flores. He was in Pittsburgh for that one season after he got fired from the Dolphins. He came to Pittsburgh in 2022 as a senior defensive assistant, linebackers coach. My sort of feeling then was like, ooh, this is interesting. Like maybe Tomlin's thinking about stepping down. Like I thought maybe they're never going to fire him. You know what I mean? If he hadn't stepped down earlier this month, he would not have been fired.
Right.
That's the bottom line. There's no way they would have fired him. So I was sort of thinking, ooh, Brian Flores, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of interesting because he's a big, his defenses are stellar, with the Vikings, they've been super top ranked in the league since he's been with them in 2023. So that's where I would lean, but I'm not Art Rooney.
Yeah.
I feel like their top candidate right now is Chris Shula, the defensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams. And obviously with a name like Shula, you know what you're going to get, right? I mean, defensive guy from the moment he was born, right? So, and, he's got connections, his obviously, Don Shula, right? I mean, my goodness, right? But he had spent time with Chuck Noll, you know what I mean? So that right there is huge. And, there's some connections there as Grant, his father, had some connections with Kevin Colbert, the former GM. So there's a lot of connections, roots and things. And Pittsburgh loves all of that.
They love it. They do.
They love it. They love it. They just can't get enough. And I feel like Brian Flores interview today, if he was their lead guy, he would not have left the building. And I think right now, kind of this weekend, I was sort of rooting for the Rams to lose because I was like, well, then we can get going, right? We can hire Chris and get the ball rolling. I think we're going to have to wait a while. We might even have to wait, through Super Bowl through February. But I think that Chris Shula is ultimately going to be the guy. That's my
okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, moving on with the conversation here, we, of course, have to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation, where that's going to be going in the future. I mean, they, of course, have one of the oldest quarterbacks in the league, one of the oldest quarterbacks to play the game, and Aaron Rodgers, who is expected to return to the Steelers next season from what is being reported. It's not 100% definite as of us recording this on Tuesday, January 20th. But I'm wondering, how are folks in the fan base really discussing what this might actually mean for the future of the team, for the future of the offense, the team overall, and really the future of the Steelers quarterback position? Because, there aren't a lot of great quarterbacks necessarily coming out in the draft. There's a few, but how is the fan base really reacting to, okay, we're going to have another Aaron Rodgers season probably, and what does that mean ultimately for the quarterback position?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that when Tomlin stepped down, the initial talk was he's not coming back because the reason why he came to Pittsburgh was because of Mike Tomlin. So I really do feel like it all depends on who they end up getting as the head coach, right?
Yeah.
There's that Mike McCarthy talk, which
goodness.
No, God, no. Please,
Goodness, don't do
please,
that.
no, God, right. Oh, no. You know what I mean? So let's not do that.
Yes.
But of course they have that connection. But it's
right.
like Aaron Rodgers is probably gonna, he's old. Let's just put in football years, he's old, right?
Yes.
He didn't play poorly this year. I expected him to play worse than he did and or get injured and not play the whole season. So that was impressive alone.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell too whether, especially that last game where his last play was a pick six and then they benched him for Mason Rudolph. I mean, how embarrassing is that?
Yeah.
I mean, not that he cares. You know what I mean? Not that he's Aaron Rodgers, he doesn't crap, but
right.
It's just I'm curious as to how the whole thing is going to look because a lot of talk is that Tomlin had his thumb on everything. Defense, offense, special. Like he was the ultimate sayer of what happens and what didn't happen. So was the offense, was it Arthur Smith? Was it Mike Tomlin? Was it Aaron Rodgers? I would be okay if he came back for another year because as you alluded to, the quarterback class is very poor. It's very similar to the class, the very weak rather, to the class where Kenny Pickett was drafted, right? We're not going to get a Mendoza. We're not going to get a top guy.
Right.
And we have a lot of draft capital. Could we surprise the world since the draft is in Pittsburgh? Could we surprise everybody and trade a bunch of picks for Mendoza? Sure. But it's going to be, that's going to be, you know what I mean? Like, foolish.
Yeah.
So I'm cool with Rodgers sticking around, you know what I mean? Mentoring Will Howard. I want to see, Will Howard, that's all the talk is going to be in the offseason is about Will Howard and what he can do. We haven't seen it yet, and I think Steeler Nation is very curious.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting to see where it goes because franchise quarterback positions, that is the cornerstone of NFL teams and offenses for sure. Yeah.
We haven't been looking for one since Ben retired. I think we know that they don't grow on trees, right? But, it's not, they're not easy to come by. In fact, I feel like they're harder to come by than
Absolutely. Folks, again, we're talking to Allison Koehler from the Pro Football and Sports Network. You can follow her on the Twitter/X at @Koehler NFL. Great follow. And where are you also on the interwebs? Anywhere else where people can follow you, Allison? No, not really. She said not really there. Okay.
Damn, I have a Facebook, but nobody really. I'm not, not really that active.
I don't even care anymore. I really don't. Even though I have to, you feel like you have to post the stuff. We're in this realm and we're in this space, and we feel like we have to freaking post this stuff. It's the worst. It really is. And I say that because now I'm going to put up a graphic for folks who may stumble upon this video podcast on YouTube. You can like and subscribe to us here at the PST Podcast Show. And if you're in the world of Philly sports or even the sports world in general, we got a lot of great content for you. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube. And we're going to take a break. And when we get back, we got more Steelers talk coming your way. All right, we are back with our good friend Allison Koehler from the Pro Football and Sports Network, talking about this Pittsburgh Steelers team and where this franchise is going to be going in the future with a lot of different potential changes as well. And I'd like to get into some of those potential changes with regard to the Steelers' offensive skill positions and weapons, Allison. And let's start off with the running back position because I thought it was really interesting last season when the Steelers acquired one Kenneth Gainwell, a former Philadelphia Eagle, who a lot of us liked to an extent, but it was obvious after watching him in Pittsburgh and what he did this year and that safety blanket for Aaron Rodgers that the Eagles didn't necessarily utilize him probably to his fullest potential. So again, let's start with the running back position. Got Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, and Gainwell's probably, again, one of their most versatile players on offense. And the question is whether or not they're going to re-sign him. I kind of don't see how they don't re-sign him. I think they probably should based on what we saw. Anyway, how do these players fit into the offensive discussion for next season, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question too. It all comes down to the head coach. It comes back down to the head coach.
Head coach,
Who's the offensive coordinator, who the whole team, who the whole staff is. But yeah, to me, I would say yes. You cannot not re-sign Kenneth Gainwell. He's been he was like their leading receiver.
He was incredible.
I mean, my goodness. I mean, which is not saying a lot for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Let's just put it that way. However,
we'll get to the receivers in a bit here.
Yeah, but no, he was incredible. I mean, there were plenty of games that we would not have won if we didn't have him, right? So we definitely need to do whatever we need to do. And we have a lot of cap space. I can't, off the top of my head, I don't remember, but we have one of the top, I think we're like the top 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
So we have money, you know what I mean? We do have a lot of, older guys and whatnot on contracts, which we'll talk about later, but yeah, we do need to re-sign Kenneth Gainwell. Jalen Warren, good guy, you know what I mean? But he's not a lead back, you know what I mean?
I think he didn't he last year? I think it was September of last year. Yeah, 2-year contract extension. I believe it was like $17.5 million over 3 years, to $12 million guaranteed.
Yeah, which is pretty nice for a guy who likes to fumble the ball every once in a while. But whatever, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, no, he needs another guy, and I why not? You know what I mean? I mean, we drafted Caleb Johnson. Oh gosh, you know what I mean? I don't know what we were expecting out of that, but rookies are rookies, especially running backs. So maybe something will happen with him at some point. Maybe they just weren't. Again, it might have been Mike Tomlin thing. Maybe they just weren't using him right, things like that. But yeah, I definitely expect us to re-sign Kenneth Gainwell.
All right. Yeah. Well, you mentioned the receivers, so let's dive into the receiving situation here in Pittsburgh, and including the tight end position here. Look, DK Metcalf, certainly a pretty good talent on this team and throughout the league, and we also did see some flashes here and there from Calvin Austin, who is going to be a free agent. In fact, a lot of the Steelers wide receiver depth, they are going to be free agents and not coming back this year, or this coming year in 2026, I should say. You've got Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth. They had some productive games and moments here and there, but they're not necessarily the dominant tight ends. This Steelers receiving core, I think if Aaron Rodgers is going to be coming back, he's probably going to want some more, quote, high-end talent. I'm wondering, where do you think the receiver position itself needs to really go this offseason?
Yeah, that's just that's been the question for like a couple of years now, right? I mean, we thought, George Pickens was, going to be around a while. Yeah, I'm still torn on that. Obviously, he was one of the top receivers in the league, right? But would he have been a top receiver in the league in Pittsburgh? Who knows, right? I mean, we saw DK Metcalf. What did he didn't do much. You know what I mean? He had flashes, but again, whatever to that. I don't know. They need, the one thing I do know is they need to stop ignoring that position. I mean, obviously they got Metcalf, but they got rid of Pickens. So it's like, it would have been great if we kept Pickens and then had Metcalf, right? Like what would have a season for the Steelers look like then? Right.
That's why I think the draft. Yeah, I think that's why the draft is going to be so important. I mean, I could genuinely see the Steelers taking with a first round pick, second round pick. I can actually see them both taking wide receivers with both picks.
Yeah. I mean, they've definitely done that in the past. They've taken back-to-back wide receivers. They're going to need to, because, Roman Wilson, they drafted him in the 3rd round a couple years ago, and he hasn't panned out to be much. Calvin Austin, like we talked about, he's shown flashes. If we re-sign him for pennies, cool. You know what I mean? That's nice.
Yeah.
He's not going to, I don't think he's going to, I don't see him going anywhere. He's a little dude, I don't see him going anywhere else and changing the world or anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, we may end up re-signing him. But yeah, we definitely need to focus on that wide receiver position this year in this draft, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Well, look, the one thing that the Steelers have always been known for, and I mean, you essentially mentioned it, before the break, was they've been a defensive-minded team, year after year after year. Seems like decade after decade at this point. And there are certainly some big defensive players on this Steelers team, big names. Some of these guys, though, they're aging. And some of these big names, they didn't necessarily show up in big spots when it mattered most this season. How would you like to see the Steelers front office really address any aspects of the defense this offseason, Allison?
Right. Yeah. Obviously, I feel like I love TJ Watt. I love him.
Anybody would. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
However, right, it's a business. I would have traded him already. To be honest with you, it's an unpopular opinion. There's some people who do share it with me, but I would have traded him already for draft picks.
Gotcha.
Because we do have, Herbig, man, he's been phenomenal. Jack Sawyer's been really great. You know what I mean? So I think that we don't have anybody TJ Watt level right now. You know what I mean? But Herbig definitely could be at that level at some point. So yeah, Cam Hayward, you know what I mean? My concern, I was really sad for him, I think, the most, because anybody who watches the Steelers, they always Mike Tomlin and Cam Hayward walk off the field together after every game, like walking off into the sunset. They're like BFFs.
Yeah.
My heart was with him because, I feel like he's probably lost like one of his best friends, right? So, that sort of made it, especially with his age, right? But he didn't have any injuries. I mean, not any that kept him out of games. He's still very valuable. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to have any trade value like TJ Watt would, right? So, it's going to be interesting. And again, a lot of it depends on who they end up bringing in and what they want to do and what they sort of see as the future of Pittsburgh's defense.
Yeah. A lot up in the air for sure. And Allison, before I let you go, and I know it's a very general question to close us out here, but from an overall perspective, after everything we've discussed here, offensively, defensively, where this offseason may go, how do the Steelers become more competitive in the AFC next season? Again, I know it's a general question, but what are your thoughts here?
Well, again, it's the AFC North's been crazy, right? Because literally Zach Taylor, who's he? You know what I mean? Like, he's the only guy standing in the AFC North. So it's like, who knows? Like, whoever the Browns end up getting, whoever the Ravens end up getting, I hope it's not Joe Brady. Man, they interviewed him today. I think the second interview. That concerns me because he's very good, right? The Bills offensive coordinator. Very good. That really concerns me.
I hope he comes to Philly, to be honest with you. There's part of me that hopes he does. Like, I've been a Mike McDaniels type of guy as well, but Joe Brady as well. I'm liking him too. So there's options.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it really, I still feel like we're going to still be in the mix with the Ravens, the Browns. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whatever happens there. The Bengals obviously just depends on whatever happens to Joe Burrow, if he doesn't get injured or not. Right. So, it all again, our competitiveness in the future depends on who we get. You know what I mean? To lead the team and be on the staff and whatnot. So
all right.
It's going to be an interesting season, that's for sure.
Absolutely. An interesting offseason. And folks, head on over to Pro Football and Sports Network. Allison is the managing editor over there. Where can they find the work at over there?
Yeah, that's the thing. We're covering everything. We used to just be PFN, which was Pro Football Network, and then we expanded in this past January. It's been a year. We expanded to cover all sports. So really, pretty much anything that you want sports-wise, you will find there. And NFL is our bread and butter, and we cover it like you wouldn't believe. So
absolutely.
Run over to profootballnetwork.com and check out all the content that we have.
She's Allison Koehler, folks. It was great to have you on, Allison. Thank you so much for taking the time, for jumping on our Opposition Territory pod. I'd love to talk to you again at some point down the road. Come back and join us, my friend.
I'd love to. Thanks a lot, Jeff.